Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
There are two sides to the story. Let's look at the other side. We often hear about shop girls. But there aren't any. There are girls who work in shops to earn money. But why call them shop girls? That's not fair. We don't call the girls who live on Fifth Avenue marriage girls. Lou and Nancy were friends. They came to the big city to find work because there wasn't enough food at home. Nancy was 19, Lou was 20. They were both pretty country girls who didn't want to be actors. They found a cheap and good boarding house. Both got jobs and started earning money. They stayed friends. After 6 months you would meet them. Hello, reader. Meet my friends, Nancy and Lou. Look at their clothes carefully. They don't like people staring at them. Lou irons clothes in a laundry. She wears a purple dress and a hat with a long feather. She has a $25 muffin scarf. Nancy works in a shop. She wears a shabby skirt and a broadcloth jacket. She has a look of sadness and anger in her eyes. Now, let's leave them with Lou's cheerful goodbye and Nancy's sweet smile. They waited for Dan on the corner. Dan was Lou's good friend. He was always there for her when she needed him. "Aren't you cold, Nance?" said Lou. "You're silly for working in that old store for $8 a week. I made $18.50 last week. Ironing isn't as fancy as selling lace, but it pays. None of us ironers make less than $10. And I don't think it's any less respectable." "You can have your job," said Nancy, with her nose in the air. "I'll keep my $8 a week in small room. I like being around nice things and people. And look at the opportunity one have. One of our glove girls married a rich man from Pittsburgh last week. I might catch a rich man too. I'm not saying I'm pretty, but I'll try where there are big rewards. What chance does a girl have in a laundry?" "That's where I met Dan," said Lou proudly. "He came in for his Sunday clothes and saw me ironing. We all try to work at the first board. Ella McGinnis was sick that day, so I took her place. He said he noticed my arms first, how round and white they were. Some nice guys come to laundries. You can tell them by how they bring their clothes in suitcases and enter the door quickly." "How can you wear a top like that, Lou?" said Nancy, looking at it with disdain. "It looks terrible." "I paid $16 for this top," said Lou, surprised. "It's worth $25. A woman left it here to be washed and never picked it up. The boss sold it to me. It has lots of hand embroidery on it. You should talk about your plain top." "This plain top," said Nancy, calmly, "was copied from one Mrs. Van Alstyne Fisher wore. She spent $12,000 in the store last year. I made mine myself. It cost me $1.50. You couldn't tell the difference from hers." "Oh, well," said Lou, kindly, "if you want to starve and act like you're better, go ahead. But I'll keep my job and good pay. After work, I'll wear something nice and fancy that I can afford." Just then, Dan arrived, a serious young man with a ready-made tie, unaffected by the city's frivolity, an electrician earning $30 per week who admired Lou's embroidered top. "This is my friend, Mr. Owens. Meet Miss Danforth," said Lou. "I'm glad to meet you, Miss Danforth," said Dan, shaking her hand. "Lou talks about you a lot." "Thanks," said Nancy, touching his fingers with hers. "I've heard about you too." Lou giggled. "Did you learn that handshake from Mrs. Van Alstyne Fisher, Nance?" she asked. If I did, you can copy it, said Nancy. Oh, I couldn't use it. It's too fancy for me. It's meant to show off diamond rings. Wait till I get a few rings, then I'll try it. Learn it first, said Nancy wisely, and you might get the rings. Now, to settle this argument, said Dan, with his cheerful smile, let me suggest something. Since I can't take both of you to Tiffany's to see real diamonds, how about watching a vaudeville show? I've got the tickets. We can see stage diamonds instead of real ones. Dan stood by the road, Lou next to him in her bright clothes, and Nancy inside, dressed plainly like a sparrow but walking with elegance. They set off for their evening's simple fun. Many don't see a big store as a place to learn, but for Nancy, the one where she worked was like that. She was surrounded by beautiful things that spoke of good taste. If you're around luxury, you feel it, whether you pay for it or not. She served mostly women whose style and manners were seen as examples. Nancy learned from each one, the best of their gestures, expressions, and way of speaking to others. From her favorite model, Mrs. Van Alstyne Fisher, she learned to speak with a soft, clear voice. Being around this refinement had a deep effect on her. Good manners can be even better than good habits. Even if your family's teachings don't stick, sitting up straight and saying certain words can make you feel better. When Nancy spoke like Mrs. Van Alstyne Fisher, she felt a sense of responsibility to act in a noble way. There's another way Nancy learned at the big store. When you see a group of shopgirls chatting and jingling their bracelets, they're not just gossiping about hairstyles. It's like when Eve and her daughter first talked about how to deal with Adam. It's a meeting where women share ideas about dealing with the world and men who keep praising it. During these talks, they share tips and tricks they've learned from life. I told him, says Sadie, you're so rude. Who does he think I am? And guess what he said back? They discuss and decide how to respond to such remarks from men in the future. Nancy learned how to defend herself, and for women, winning a defense is like winning a battle. Working in the store exposed Nancy to many things. Her job was near the music room, so she heard great music. She also saw beautiful things like fancy clothes and jewelry, which taught her about culture and refinement. This helped her with her dream of finding a good husband. The other girls noticed Nancy's dream. They teased her whenever a rich-looking man came to her counter. Men, waiting for their wives, often came to her counter to chat. They were drawn to Nancy because of her classy demeanor and genuine beauty. Some may have been rich, while others were just trying to impress. Nancy learned to tell the difference. From her counter, she could see the different cars waiting outside, each reflecting its owner's status. Once, a charming man bought many handkerchiefs and flirted with her. After he left, a co-worker asked why she wasn't interested. Nancy replied calmly to him, "No thanks. I saw his car, a small one with an Irish driver. And he bought silk handkerchiefs. He's not my type." Two refined women from the store invited Nancy to dinner with their gentleman friends. One was bald from high living and the other wore expensive cufflinks. The young man took an interest in Nancy because she combined the manners of his social circle with her own charm. The next day, he proposed to her at the store with a box of fancy linens. Nancy said no. A co-worker scolded her, saying the man was a millionaire, a nephew of a rich man. She couldn't understand why Nancy refused. "Did I?" Nancy replied. "I didn't accept his proposal, did I? He's not super rich, you know. His family gives him $20,000 a year to spend. The bald guy teased him about it at dinner. The brown-haired coworker came closer, her voice hoarse without gum. "What more do you want?" she asked. "Isn't $20,000 a year good enough? Do you want to marry everyone? Isn't that enough for you?" Nancy felt embarrassed under her stare. "It's not just about the money, Carrie," she explained. "He lied to his friend at dinner about going to the theater with another girl. I can't trust a liar. I want someone genuine, not a fake. When I find someone, it won't be on sale. I want a real catch, someone substantial." "Whatever," said Carrie, walking away. Nancy held on to her high standards, even on her $8 per week salary. She searched for a good partner, eating simple food and saving money. The store was her hunting ground, but she always trusted her instincts about potential partners. Lou thrived in the laundry job, earning $18.50 a week. She paid $6 for her room and board and spent the rest on clothes. She didn't have many chances to improve her manners like Nancy did. In the laundry, it was just work and thoughts of evening fun. Dan, always loyal, waited for her outside, though he sometimes worried about the attention her flashy clothes attracted. Lou always included Nancy in their outings as per their rule. Dan happily joined them. Lou added fun, Nancy added class, and Dan brought stability to their trio. He wore simple clothes and had a pleasant personality, easy to forget when present but memorable afterward. Sometimes, Nancy found these simple pleasures lacking, but being young, she enjoyed them anyway. "Lately, Dan's been pushing me to marry him," Lou confided in Nancy. "But why rush? I like my independence. I earn my own money and can do what I want. He wouldn't want me to keep working if we got married. And why do you stick to that store, barely eating and dressing? I could get you a job at the laundry. You could make more money." "I don't think I'm being stubborn, Lou," Nancy replied. "I'd rather stay where I am, even if it means less food. I want the opportunity to grow. I learn something new every day at the store, dealing with rich people. I'm observing and learning." "Found your millionaire yet?" Lou teased. "Not yet," Nancy answered. "I'm still looking." "Don't let any pass you by, even if he's not super rich," Lou advised jokingly. "But seriously, millionaires don't notice girls like us." "It might help them if they did," Nancy remarked wisely. "Some of us could teach them how to manage their money." "If one ever spoke to me, I'd faint," Lou joked. "You don't know any," Nancy said. "Rich people just need more attention. By the way, do you think the red lining is too bright for that coat, Lou?" Lou examined Nancy's plain olive jacket. "I don't think so," she replied. "But it may look bright next to your faded coat. This jacket is similar to one Mrs. Van Alstyne Fisher wore," Nancy explained. "It cost me $3.98, probably $100 less than hers." "Well, it doesn't seem like millionaire bait to me," Lou joked. "I might catch one before you do." It would be hard to say whose ideas were better, Lou's or Nancy's. Lou happily worked in the noisy laundry, earning more than enough to live comfortably. Sometimes she looked at Dan's plain clothes and wished for more style. Nancy's story is common among many. She loved beautiful things like silk, jewels, and perfumes. These were part of her life. She didn't betray herself by wanting these things. She knew she deserved them even though she didn't have much money. Nancy thrived in this world. She ate simple meals and thought about her dresses. She was learning about men and what she wanted in a partner. She promised herself she'd aim high. But something changed in Nancy. She started valuing things like truth, honor, and kindness more than money. It was like a hunter who finds a peaceful spot in the woods and forgets about hunting. Nancy often wondered if people valued expensive things for what they were or just because they were expensive. One Thursday evening, Nancy went to the laundry to meet Lou and Dan. Dan looked worried. "I came to see if they heard from Lou," he said. "Heard from who?" asked Nancy. "Isn't Lou here?" "I thought you knew," said Dan. "She hasn't been here or at her place since Monday. She took all her things and might be going to Europe," he explained. "Did anyone see her?" Nancy asked Dan anxiously. Dan's face turned stern, and his eyes looked serious. "They said they saw her yesterday, in a fancy car," he said sharply. "Probably with one of those rich guys you and Lou were always talking about." Nancy felt scared by Dan's accusation. She touched his arm gently. "You shouldn't accuse me like that, Dan. I had nothing to do with it." "I didn't mean it like that," Dan said, softening. He took out the tickets for the show. "I've got tickets for tonight's show," he said, trying to sound cheerful. "Do you want to come with me?" "Nosiet Meyer dans courage." "I'll come with you, Dan," she said. 3 months passed before Nancy saw Lou again. One evening, as Nancy was walking home near a quiet park, she heard her name. Lou came running and hugged her tightly. After the first hug, they both looked at each other, ready to talk. Nancy noticed that Lou looked prosperous, wearing expensive furs, sparkling jewelry, and stylish clothes. "You silly thing!" Lou exclaimed, both loudly and lovingly. "I see you're still at that store, looking shabby as ever. And what about that rich guy you were aiming for? No luck yet, I guess?" Then Lou looked closer and noticed something even better than wealth in Nancy, a sparkle in her eyes, a rosy blush on her cheeks, and excitement ready to burst out. "Yes, I'm still at the store," Nancy replied. "But I'm leaving next week. I found my prize, the best one in the world. You won't mind, will you, Lou? I'm marrying Dan, my Dan now." "Why, Lou?" Around the corner walked a young policeman with a smooth face, part of the new generation of cops making the force look better. He saw a woman in a fancy fur coat, crying by the park fence, her hands adorned with diamond rings. Beside her was a plain-dressed girl, trying to comfort her. But the modern cop knew these situations were beyond his help, so he moved on, ignoring the scene, aware that some problems can't be solved even by the law.